Okay,
Hello.
so hi, thanks for being here. Okay, can you guys all see that? All right. Um, oops. Okay, so one of the things I want you guys to really be aware of is we've been in our new building now since 2020. That's when it was finished. Of course, we didn't open it until 2021, late 2021, because of the pandemic. But because we are still kind of learning how we move through and work through this space, we are constantly iterating on our programs. And one of the biggest ones we're focused on for this year is foster. And the reason being is we want to allow foster to allow us to bring in more animals. So we will be sending a lot of animals directly to foster, which means they may come in for initial checks and getting vaccines and flea meds, but then they're going to go out into foster homes right away. And they will be treated just like any other animal in our shelter space, meaning that they'll have all the same flow through procedures. So you guys, all of our fosters are really helping us meet our mission and achieve our mission. So, we take it very seriously and we want to support you through it. Our foster needs definitely vary. And right now we're still actually in kitten season. It normally is kind of tapering by this time, but because it started so late this year, it started in April, like the end of April, when it normally starts in February. So because of that, we are still seeing newly born kittens, so second or third round kittens born to moms. So we'll probably have mom and kitten or kitten needs going into the next couple months. Okay, so here's who we are. I don't expect you guys to like memorize this or know this, but we do really try to provide what it says here, a safe harbor. And we get animals a couple different ways, which I'm going to tell you in just a minute. But because this is our mission, we are again trying to assist as many partners as possible, and we wouldn't be able to do that without foster. So you are integral for us meeting our mission. So this is where our animals primarily come from. And we get probably close to, maybe I would say it's like a 40-60 spread. So 40% of incoming animals are coming from owners. And if you're taking those into foster, we're probably going to have more information on them than we would those coming from the shelters, because a lot of those animals are stray. We really focus in on our community first. So we primarily take the bulk of our partner animals from Santa Cruz County Animal Shelter right here in our neck of the woods. And then if they don't need our help, we'll branch out to other organizations. Mostly we start in the Tri-County area, so Monterey, Salinas, Hollister, and then we move further if needed, and based on who's coming to us with need. So for example, right now we do have animals that have come from Kern County. We do have animals that have come even from Maui that needed to be placed because they needed more space to take incoming animals from the fire zone. So we really try to make ourselves available for as many partners as needed. Oops, went too fast. Folks always ask us if we are a no-kill shelter. And first off, we don't really like to use that terminology because we feel like it's really divisive among shelters. And we do not want to put up any walls between us and our partners. We want to be open to any shelter that's willing to work with us. We are technically not a no-kill shelter. We do have to euthanize animals, but we are also lucky enough to say we have pretty close to a 99% placement rate. So when we do have to euthanize, it's usually a small number of animals, and it's for one of two reasons. Either their quality of life with whatever medical hurdle they have is not good, or they have a behavior issue and we've tried every tool in our toolbox and we don't feel confident and safe putting them back out in the community. So this is just a brief little bit about how we're different from the animal shelter, because everybody gets us confused all the time and probably will forevermore. We are two different shelters, even though we work so closely together. So our shelter is privately funded, which means we are a 501c3, we're a nonprofit. Everything that we use to run our shelter, down to the food and the collars and leashes and the towels, are donated by the community primarily. So we're really lucky to have that kind of support. And that allows us to give support to those larger animal shelters like Santa Cruz County and like Kern County that are getting in animals all day, every day, and just are dealing even with issues of space. So if we can take off some of their burden and allow the chance for them to not have to make so many euthanasia decisions, we want to be able to do that. Oh, I'm going to let somebody else in here. Hi, thank you for joining us. Okay, so what is our foster program like today? As I mentioned, we've gone through a lot of iterations, especially post-pandemic, and we are putting more animals in foster than ever before. This year, we're pushing ourselves even further in terms of numbers. So just to give you an example, July and August both had about 35 to 40 animals in foster homes, in addition to being completely full at our shelter. So again, it allowed us to take in more animals that we wouldn't have been able to just because of our physical spaces here at the shelter. And because we're sending animals directly to foster, oftentimes we're learning about them together. So we may have some basic info, especially if they're coming from another shelter, but you're going to be the eyes and ears that are going to tell us who they really are. So we're in pretty constant communication while you have foster animals. We do an initial check-in that's usually like 24 to 48 hours after you've taken an animal home. And then we do a weekly check-in just to make sure that you have what you need, and you know, we're helping you with any concerns that might come up along the way. If you are tech savvy, we could use your help in really boosting the signal. And a lot of our fosters take on their a piece of the marketing on their own. So they will post their foster animals in all available channels, as well as sharing them to ours. So, you know, we use all the typical ones like Facebook and Instagram and Nextdoor and so forth. So you are welcome to create your own content and boost the signal of your foster animals even more. We also really want you to be a part of not just the marketing, but also the adoption coordination. So we may have you talking to folks on the phone about your animal. Obviously, when the animal's in your care and ready to be adopted, you're going to have the most up-to-date information about them. So you really can make the difference in finding them the right fit. That doesn't mean that we expect you to do the adoption. That just means that we want you to be open to talking with people and giving them your take on the animal, and also bringing the animal here for meet and greets with either family members or other dogs. I probably don't have to tell you this, but these animals are typically not going to be like your pets at home. Even the owner surrenders, because they're going through this intake process here at a shelter. And if you haven't spent much time at a shelter is unlike any environment anywhere else, right? It's not like a home. It's not what they're used to. And every time an animal makes a change, whether it be from one shelter to another or a shelter to a foster home, there's a transition, and it's a little bit of a trauma each time. So they carry a lot of that with them. And in some cases, we don't know what their history is. So we don't know what kind of relationships they've had with people and other animals, and even whether or not they've spent any time indoors. So you really are kind of jumping in with not knowing the whole animal. Even if it is, like I said, owner surrender, we don't always get the entire picture from owners when they're bringing animals in. But we'll do the best we can to try and assist you in figuring out what to expect. Of course, there's going to be things that do come up, though, and we want to be talking with you about those so that it doesn't become a challenge for you or for other animals in your home. One of the big things to remember, and I'm going to talk about this with both cats and dogs, it is because they're going through these kind of mini traumas every time they're changing location, they are often coming to you looking for a way to get out. So whether it's a cat or a dog, because it happens with both, you're really going to want to make sure that you have a secure environment, because once they get away, it can be tough to get them back. And we've always gotten back a foster animal. Since I've been here, at least we haven't ever lost one completely, but just know that they're going to be looking for a way. So hopefully we can help you create a more secure environment with whatever you need. And we're here to kind of coach you through any issues that come up. These are a snapshot of our different kinds of foster opportunities. Slumber parties are a great place to start. If you've never had a foster animal and you're thinking, I don't know how I'm going to do with a dog in my space, or a dog or a cat around my other animals or my family, this is a good place to start because it's very low risk and very low commitment. It is literally what it sounds like. You take them home for a night and bring them back the next day. Unless you are really liking them and you want to keep them, 2 or 3 more days. That happens sometimes. But it's a great way to kind of dip your toe in without jumping in the pool. And so if you're feeling like nervous about taking on a foster animal, you can come anytime and we will show you multiple animals that can go for a slumber party. Slumber party animals are going to be the animals in our care who we would categorize as green, which means they are friendly, social, they like other animals, they don't have any outright behavior concerns that we've seen. Now, you could get them home at night and you may become you may figure out that they have a behavior concern that we didn't see. Again, a home environment's not going to be like a shelter environment, but it's pretty rare that happens. So again, these are really low risk, low commitment level. And then everything there listed there otherwise is varying time frames. If you're taking on like a kitten and a puppy foster, those tend to be anywhere from 2 weeks to 8 weeks. If it's, if they're newborns, it's going to be the full 8 weeks with their mom. We do recovery from illness or injury and emergency foster. We have had animals in the shelter during the fires, especially during the CZU. So that is something that we may call on people to do. And then behavior and quality of life is kind of a special area, because if their stress is being caused by our environment, we're pretty much going to want them to stay in foster until they find a home. And your guess is as good as mine on how long that's going to take. That's where we really need your help in marketing them and getting the word out. Sometimes our shelter stress animals stay in foster for 2 weeks. Sometimes they're in foster for 4 months. It's just dependent on what the challenges are and what is causing their stress. And then we also do end of life care for hospice animals. These would be animals that have a terminal illness that we're aware of, and the vet has given us a time frame in which to work. So they estimate how long the animal will be living. And then that foster person is working kind of on a weekly or every other week basis with our veterinarian to make sure that quality of life is always high. The minute that that quality of life changes, that's when we start talking about, what is the best thing for the animal. Any questions on any of these types of foster? Okay. Oh, yeah. Question, Dasha?
With the kitten, puppy, or pregnancy, is that like when are we gonna get the pregnant mom and then through the birth, like
Yeah,
have the birth at the
good
house?
question. Yes, we do some of those. So occasionally we'll get in animals that they are so close to giving birth that, yes, we'll try and get them into foster where they can have a successful birth. And we'll give you as many tools as we can to set you up for that. I wouldn't recommend it as a first foster go, kind of do some others first to kind of smooth in and see how it feels. But yeah, we have done quite a few of those where mom actually gives birth. And
Okay.
if you're taking that on, you just have to know that there is going to be risk, right? But more often than not, things are going to go smoothly. And for the ones that don't, we're here to really help you with that.
And then so obviously would like a little, because with a with a birth situation, is
Yes.
there very specific materials you need? Would that be provided or would that be
Yes. Yeah, we give you everything. Which
okay?
I think is that my next one? No. Um, but yeah, we give you everything that you're going to need, and we'll give you like guides on specifically, I have a pregnant mom who's about to give birth, or I have a mama who's now nursing her babies for the next 4 to 6 weeks. So yes, we will make sure you get what you need. Couple things to consider before fostering. If you are allowed to have an animal in your home, definitely check out on that. We are not going to check with your landlord, so it's really up to you to do that on your end, and make sure that you're not going to get heat for having a foster. Please make sure you check with everyone in your home, especially if you've got roommates. You want to make sure that they don't have any allergies, that there's no fear factor around the animal. And if they have their own animals, that they're comfortable having this new animal come in. Make sure you've got adequate space for your foster animal, and adequate time. And that time, so yes, you're taking care of this foster animal daily, but you have to also factor in the time that's involved with coming here for supply pickups, or getting to the vet if the animal's ill, or meeting potential adopters. So all of those things kind of take into account when you're going to take on a foster animal. And then if you do have something coming up, if you have vacations or weekends away planned, let me know that. That won't negate you from being eligible to take a foster. It just lets me know, okay, they're only going to be here for the next 3 weeks, and I'm going to find someone who can then take the animal from there. But yeah, as much info as you can give me. And of course, if things come up, that's fine too. Life happens. So if you're like, oh my gosh, I have to bring these back today, that's okay. We'll make that work. And then the last piece is making sure that you're ready to handle the emotional aspect. It is really hard to give up foster animals and feel comfortable that any adopter is going to give them the best care, right? So that's why we really want you to be a part of that matchmaking and, share what you know, so that you can help us make sure that it's the right match for the animals that you've cared for. What will you need? Okay, so here's that slide I was looking for. We're going to give you whatever you need. All the stuff listed here and additional things, just based on what kind of animal you're taking. We're going to try and make it work. And if you have to go to the veterinarian for any reason, all of the treatment protocol and all of the cost of that falls on us. So there is, in our foster handbook, there is an emergency number, basically my number, that you can call 24/7 if an emergency happens and you have to go to the vet. And we'll talk about that a little bit later too. Okay, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on animal proofing your home, but the couple things I do want to mention here. One is when you take in a foster and, 98% of them are going to have some fear, right? Because they're in a new surroundings, new people. Make sure you find out where your hidey holes are. And that could be if you're just having them in one space, like, if you take a cat and you're just having them in your bedroom, make sure you block off the hidey holes, because the more they hide, the less chance you get to know them and the less chance they get more comfortable with you. So, if you've got open space underneath your fridge or behind your washer dryer, make sure you're putting big comforters or things to block off those spaces. And if you are taking a dog, check your fencing. You need some secure fencing, and you can usually tell within the first day whether or not that animal is going to be a potential escape oriented dog. And you'll see it. They'll be pacing the fence. They'll be jumping in areas that they're hoping are shorter than others. They'll be pushing on things. So yeah, just make sure that you've checked your house before you bring in an animal. Okay, getting your foster animals settled. This is that fear factor I was just talking about. Very normal for shelter animals to have a kind of a shutdown every time they make a change. And if you don't have that, count yourself lucky, because it is more often than not. We call it this 2-week shutdown period. It's different for every animal. As you know, each animal is their own individual. But there are things you can do to really downplay this. One is make sure that you're only introducing this animal to the existing people in your home. That is a huge issue if you're bringing in a lot of different people and wanting this animal to suddenly meet everybody. So keep household members only. Stay close to your neighborhood or your home. That way they have an idea of location. And if they did get away, there's a really good chance they're going to stay close by, or they're going to come back to what they first saw. No like heavily traveled people places like the beaches or the dog parks. Not so much for your animal and how they're going to act, but more so for how other people and other animals are going to act. It's just safer to avoid that. And over time, like if you're having a longer term foster, over time, you may get to the point where you know them well and you know, oh, I can do this and it's not going to be a problem. But we want to limit that stress. When they are unsupervised at home, make sure they are secure. So if they're going to have outdoor access, make sure your fencing's secure. If you want to keep them in one room, that's fine. If you want to crate them, you can, but really crating is only meant to be for short time frames. So that would be like 2-3 hours max. And then when you're in your yard, you want to, at least at the beginning, keep them on leash and kind of see how they act. And what this can look like too is like you're not holding the leash necessarily, but you've dropped the leash. That way, if they are looking for a way to get out, you can easily pick up that leash and grab them if you felt like they were going to, be looking for an exit. And then keep all of your handling very basic and positive. Don't do any grooming. Don't try to be picking them up and carrying them everywhere. Don't try to hug them, things like that. You really want them to be the ones kind of deciding on interaction as opposed to us making that choice. Okay. Oh, I forgot one down there. Provide soothing music when the animal's inside. So this could be soothing music. This could be TV. It could be a myriad of things. But what it stops is when you're gone, or even when you're home, they're going to alert on every single thing they hear outside. And that just increases their stress level. So if you can keep something in the background that deadens that, then you're going to have a lot more comfort from the animal. Potentially. Depends on the animal, but for the most part. All right. Now, do all of you have animals at home? You can give me a yay or a nay. Okay.
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. Okay. If you do have animals at home, With dogs, if you're bringing a dog, we will want to do a dog to dog introduction here. And what that looks like is we'll have you hold your dog on a leash. We'll come out with our dog on a leash and we'll walk down the street and we'll try and let them come up organically. That way there's no forced meeting. They're not going nose to nose. They can be apart if they need to, but this will tell us if there's some real strong red flags right from the get-go. You might see you kind of want to see a little bit of dogs telling each other what they're comfortable with. So there may be a little bit of like lip raise or a little bit of growling here and there. But as long as it's not moving to them going after each other, then what we'll do is we'll walk them for a little while, see how that goes. And then if it's looking good, we'll come back and bring them into a yard and then drop their leashes and see how they do there. And then what we would recommend is if it's looking good, like they're going to tolerate each other, then we'll have you do the same thing at your house. So before you even bring them inside, take them out of the car, walk them down the street. Again, let them kind of sniff and get used to each other. And see how that goes. And then, you can eventually move to the home. And one big thing to remember, and you guys may know this already, it's really important to keep your leash loose. The more pressure you put on that leash, the more stress the dog is going to get. That dog feels that, and then they think, oh no, something's happening. I need to respond. And that's when you see dogs constantly, lunging and barking. And then you see the person like, no, and it's like a never ending, like a snowball effect. So you want to keep your leash as loose as possible and really be cognizant of your own behavior, not just the dogs, because they really do pick up on everything of the person who's handling them. And then when you do finally go into the home, make sure you're not leaving them alone together unless you're certain it's going to be okay. And even then, if you're going to leave them alone, make sure you're picking up things that aren't going to be something they could fight over, like a really good treat or, favorite toy, that kind of stuff. And then dog to cat is a little bit tougher. If you're introducing the dog to the cat, what I usually say is start with scent sharing. So anything that smells like the dog and something that smells like the cat, and you put it in the areas where those animals are so that they get some familiarity with the scent of the other animal and the fact that they may be in their space. And then you can try feeding them on opposite sides of a closed door. That can also be a way for them to hear and smell each other, but not get to each other, and they're getting some yummy food. So if you're doing that, you want to use something that's really wet and stinky that, they would consider high value. And then once you actually allow them to meet, what I typically would recommend is if you can put up some barrier between the dog and the cat, like a baby gate or an X pen. That way the dog, even if the dog's going to jump over it, it's going to slow them down a bit. That way, you don't accidentally have the dog get to the cat and actually hurt the cat if they're wanting to go after it. And you can also tell if you have a dog at home and every time they see a cat, they're, they get super excited and they get focused and you can't pull them away. That's probably a pretty good indication that, you're not going to send a foster cat to you because their prey drive is just too high. When you do cat to cat, you want to allow them the same thing. You can do some scent sharing. You can do the feeding on the closed door. And then when you allow them to be in the same space, just make sure it's always supervised and a little bit of, interaction where the resident cat is, hissing or swatting at the other cat initially and then moving away. That kind of stuff is okay to happen. You just don't want it to be a continuous, like, I'm going to get you type thing. Does that make sense? And then, of course, we're here to help you through any of that if it comes up. Any questions on that stuff? Okay. All right, so I mentioned that oftentimes if they're fearful, they're going to be looking for an escape route. And this is especially important to be aware of in that, like 2-week shutdown period. So we are willing to give you whatever is necessary. Here we've got the X-Pen airlock. And we have airlocks here at our shelter. We use them often, so we know that it works, right? And again, any animal could potentially get over or through one of these, but it slows them down enough that you're able to close a door. If you have a really heavily traveled front door, this is something that you might want to ask for, and we'll just make sure that, you're not creating a situation where the animal's going to get away from you. We do give you a leash and a well-fitting harness, and you want to make sure that it stays well-fitting. We always ask that you do not attach the leash to the collar. The collar is meant really just to be ID for the animal, and it's the quickest way to lose an animal that wants to get away, and they just slip right out of the collar. So always make sure that your leash is attached to the harness. When you are first having them, at least for that first week or so, you don't necessarily want to have a lot of unsupervised outside time for a dog. Just because, again, the more rope you give them, they're gonna capitalize on that. So try and keep an eye on them if you can. And then no outside time for cats. Cats are a lot harder to get back if they get away from their foster, and it has happened, but it's just trickier. So definitely cats are indoor only. And again, check your fencing, make sure there's no holes. All right, so you guys said you're going to be doing both, Dasha, and Benjamin, you're doing dogs. Christopher, you're also doing dogs, yes?
Yeah, sorry I'm late. I'm Tip's friend and neighbor.
Yeah, she mentioned
She
it.
just
So
forwarded me the call, so thanks for letting me jump in late.
yeah, no problem. Jocelyn, are you still there? I see you, or I see that I think you're there, but I haven't heard you chime in. Okay, well, I'm going to go kind of quickly through the cat stuff, just because you guys are a little bit more dog heavy. So for kitties, whether they be juveniles or adults, you're going to be feeding them twice a day. And for cats, they actually have to have both wet and dry. They don't get enough moisture from drinking water. Most of them are not real good about drinking water. So they need the wet in addition to the dry to make up that moisture. So we're going to give you both. And usually, it doesn't have to be a huge amount. The wet food is richer and higher in fat. So you don't want to just go crazy with it. You want to mix the two and make it a good amount. Probably don't need to tell you this, but just in case, milk should never be given to cats. The kind of milks we drink, they cannot process. So water only, please. And they should be fed away from their litter box. This is especially important if you're using a large bathroom or bedroom. Make sure that the litter and the food are at least 6 feet apart, because they will not use one or the other if they're too close. Make sure that you're scooping their box several times. They can be really particular about their litter box and its cleanliness. They can be kept in a smaller space, and usually we recommend that for at least the first week, just because getting used to a new space with all its smells and new people, they really need that kind of closed in spot so that they can decompress. And then we're going to give you all the toys, scratching pads, whatever you need for enrichment. Unless you have those already, and you're certainly okay to tell me, hey, I don't need that stuff. I've got some at home that they can use. And then just a reminder, don't let them outside. And make sure you check your, if you have windows that you open where the cat's going to be staying and you have a screen, make sure you secure that screen, because we have had cats push through screens to get out. So, just make sure you're checking everything. Okay, this is the things that we hear about most that come up with our fosters. And on the right is cat language. Just to refresh you if you already knew this, or show you for a first time. The biggest thing I would recommend you watch for a cat is the tail. And the tail is going to twitch probably before anything else will. So it's usually the first precursor to, okay, this cat's either getting annoyed or is scared or is just had it. So definitely be watching the tail. For destructive scratching, we're going to give you a scratch pad. And what we would recommend is if they're going for something that you don't want them scratching, move whatever we've given you just in front of that. And we usually give you a little catnip along with the scratching pad and make sure you're using that catnip so that you can lure them to it. And then if they are going for that stuff anyways, there's a couple ways you could deter them. One is just double stick tape. They don't like the feel of that. The other is something that you can get at the pet store called bitter apple. And this is just, I would only recommend this if the cat is just going to town on something and you're not having success stopping that. And the bitter apple, you just spray wherever it is that they're scratching. And when they scratch, then lick their paws, it tastes really nasty. It doesn't hurt them at all. It just tastes yucky and it's a pretty good deterrent. So those are a couple options for you. But definitely make sure you're giving them as many appropriate options as possible. And I know a lot of people don't believe this, but cats learn just like dogs. So if you can reinforce them for doing the right thing, do it. If they're scratching on the scratch pad, say, good cat, give them treats, make it more of a chance that they're going to do it again. And then overstimulation means that the cat is either overstimulated by play or overstimulated by the interaction with you. And that's where you really want to watch that tail, because when they get overstimulated, usually what happens is the tail starts to swish really quickly back and forth or slap the ground, or it may twitch, and you may even see like the hair on their back start to twitch or their back muscles start to twitch. That all means that they're getting annoyed, and it's their way of telling you, if you don't stop that, I'm probably going to try and either swipe or bite. So if they're doing that, just stop what you're doing, ignore for a bit, and try again later. Or if you have a good toy nearby, have them go for the toy and get out some of that angst that way. But don't keep touching them, because chances are you're probably going to get bit or scratched. Also, if they roll over on their side, unlike a dog when it rolls over is telling you they want their belly rubbed. That is not true for a cat. Cats will most often attack a hand that tries to touch their belly. So instead, if they do that, they're saying, I'm comfortable in your presence. So they are getting more comfortable with you. And if you want to touch them, you just like scritch them on the head or scratch their cheeks, because that's what other cats would do. Okay, for litter box stuff, we don't want anybody to have to deal with that. So if they stop using a litter box, let me know immediately. Usually we'll take them to the vet first and try and figure out if there's a medical reason for it. If not, then we'll need to do some troubleshooting to figure out what's causing it. It could be the size of the box. It could be the type of litter. It could be a cat that they see outside the window. There's a myriad of reasons behaviorally why they stop using the box. But most of them, like 9 out of 10 cats that come in, know how to use a box and will use it. So we always send them out with the idea, okay, they're going to be fine. And then if something comes up, we troubleshoot. Okay, any questions on the cat stuff? Dasha, no, okay. All right, so I'm going to go through the same thing with dogs now, which should hit everybody in this group. Dogs, we also feed twice a day, and we're doing primarily dry for the dog unless they are needing to put on some weight, or they are missing teeth, or there's some other reason why they can't do the dry kibble. It is a better diet choice for them. And what you can do is ask for some wet food, and we often give wet food along with the dry. And the what is good if they stop eating. Maybe the transition has them stopping eating because they're nervous, or they're not feeling so great because they're nervous. So if you mix in a little wet, that often will entice them. You can also just wet down the food with warm water. Sometimes dogs would prefer that mush as opposed to the kibble. And you can also use like a warm chicken broth to entice them as well. Always make sure you've got fresh water available to them. We usually send dogs with a crate, unless they're, 70 or 80 pounds plus. Sometimes we don't always have a crate available in that size. But most often we're going to send you with a crate. And if we do, just leave it open and available to the dog at all times. That way, if they do feel like they need a break, they can go in there. And a lot of them will. Regular exercise is super important, not just for potty. A lot of our strays, we don't know if they're potty trained, so we can never tell you 100%. Even if it's an owner surrender, we can't tell you that 100%. But if you get them on a regular routine of feeding and exercise, then usually you're able to get them either, remembering what they've already learned or learning how to potty train. So frequent potty breaks. As I mentioned before, no invasive handling. If you are in need of things like nail trimming or you notice there's a grooming issue, let us know. We have the ability to do some of it on site, and then we have grooming facilities that do grooming for us for free. So we'll have a professional do it. We don't want you guys to put yourselves at risk. And then please avoid the dog parks, beaches, at least initially, just because, again, you can control the animal, but you can't control all those people and their animals. So to avoid mishaps, it's the safest thing to do. All right, same thing for dogs here. On the right is the dog body language, and on the left are the issues we hear about most often with foster. Primarily with dogs, what I'm seeing in foster homes is typically fear or anxiety, the top two. And for fear, if you've had dogs before, you may already be aware of this, but the best way for them to make that transition is to let them direct the interactions between you. And that means you have to ignore them. You have to not be looking them in the eye, not trying to reach out to them, not calling them by name. You just wait until they come to you. And then when they do, you drop treats. And over time, that is going to make you a positive. They're going to see, oh, if I get close to this person, I get something good. And they're going to make that connection. And then from there, you can work to, oh, now you're coming over and taking it out of my hand, or now you're taking the treat out of my hand and I'm touching you on the side. So you just have to go at their pace, and just force yourself not to push yourself onto the animal, right? They really need, in order to build that trust, they need to be able to decide how that interaction is going to work. And for separation anxiety, if you are experiencing this, it's usually not, what I've seen mostly in foster is not like high level anxiety. It's more of just a low general anxiety. And there are ways to work through that. One of them is, we all do this. I even do this with my own dog. When you get home at the end of the day, you exclaim and you want your dog to come up and jump up on you, and it's so exciting. And when we do that, they start to really learn our routine, and then they are super sensitive to it. So, you have to make your going and coming back home as like unexciting as possible, just like any other time, right? You just walk in, you don't look at them, and just do your thing, and eventually they come up and they're like, hey, what's up? So if you make less of it, that can help with some of that separation anxiety. Otherwise, it's like you go for your keys and they're like, oh God, they're leaving, I gotta freak out. So keep it low key. Definitely provide as much enrichment as you can. We're willing to give you anything that will work for this animal. That could be non-edible chews like Kongs. We'll give you peanut butter. We'll give you tons of treats. We'll give you puzzles, lots of things that can keep their brain busy. And then, like I mentioned before, you want to leave something on in the background, because a separation anxiety animal is going to be listening to every single thing. So if you can deaden some of that stimulation, that's going to help. For resource guarding, we should know although I have sent out fosters and we found out after the fact that they want to guard something either against another animal or against a person. And it's usually something that's high value, like, you know, a chew toy or their bed. So you don't ever want to try and take something from an animal that is guarding it. Instead, you want to see if you can do a trade. And that's what we do here. We find something that's a little more higher value. So, you know, if they're guarding their bed, I would get some chicken or some cold cuts and put that over here. And then when they go for that, I'll take away that thing that they're guarding. And then, you know, okay, well, I can't leave that out anymore because they're going to guard it and I don't want anybody to get hurt. And guarding is it's usually involves them, you know, giving you kind of a side whale eye and a growl and maybe even lifting their lips so you can see their teeth. Those are all precursors, right? They're being nice and they're giving you a warning. So you don't want to push past that ever, because then that's when they're going to bite. If you do want to allow them to have something really high value, just make sure that they're in a safe space where they're not going to put anybody at risk. So close them into one room or put them in that crate and then allow them to have, like, you know, that really yummy chew toy. If they're guarding you, which can happen, especially if they're a longer term foster, you want them to be able to alert people, right, that they're uncomfortable with the situation, but you can change that situation. So what I would do is, if like I'm on the couch and my dog's sitting next to me, and someone tries to sit on the other side of the dog or tries to sit next to me and the dog starts growling, I might just put them down and have them on the floor and then ignore them. That way they kind of will start to understand, okay, maybe that's not an okay thing to do in this situation. The other thing you want to do or remember to try and do is, if you take a small dog, try and have them on 4 paws on the floor as much as possible. Don't carry them in your arms all the time. You know, don't put them in your purse. That just amps up their need to guard you. So make sure that they're on a leash and 4 on the floor. And then potty issues. Again, we can't ever really tell you for sure that a dog is potty trained. So getting them on that schedule is super important. Get them on a regular routine. Then when they're doing the things you want, you give them lots of reinforcement. We can give you a long line, as it says here. Sometimes that's helpful. Like if you're going to be home with them for the first few days, a long line is just a really long leash that you can attach to yourself, and it gives them more space to move around and investigate and do what they would normally do, but it doesn't allow them to get so far that they leave you, you know, a nice mess in the back room. The more it's getting tugged on, the more I would probably go, okay, something's going on. Maybe I need to get them out and they can have a potty break. So that's a good way to kind of troubleshoot that. We can also give you belly bands for the dogs that like to mark their territory. And those just go right over the middle, right over their stuff. And they're washable, and we can give you, you know, 5 or 6 of them so that you don't have to, you know, constantly be washing the same one. But that will keep your house from becoming pee central. And a lot of times if you put the belly band on them once they're in the home, after a day or 2, they don't like the feeling of having a wet belly band up against their belly. So it often stops the behavior too, which is nice. Any questions on any of that? No? Okay. All right, training. We don't require you to do this, but if you would like to take it on, that's fabulous. We only really use positive reinforcement training, which means that you're just trying to increase the likelihood of a behavior by using something that the dog likes. And it's different for every dog. I mean, yes, a lot of dogs like treats, but some dogs only like certain treats. Some dogs like toys. Some dogs really like praise. You kind of have to figure out what it is that this dog likes the most. And then when they're doing what you want to reinforce that behavior. And then when they're doing what you don't want, you want to ignore, right? You're ignoring the bad and reinforcing the good. And this is the best way to build confidence and help them build trust in you. So it's really important for building that bond. And it teaches them what they should do rather than focusing on what they shouldn't. And we really want you to avoid using any fear, pain, intimidation as motivators. Just not the way to go about it these days, right? And do remember that a dog's memory and understanding of your reinforcement and your response, it has to be like razor sharp. Because if the dog makes a puddle and then walks away and you come in 5 minutes later, they're not going to know what you're upset about, right? So just remember, you've got to kind of catch it in the moment. So like if a dog was in the middle of a pee here, I would probably just do like a no or a clap, and then I would usher them outside. And then when they started going outside, good job, you know. Okay. Even if this isn't your method, even if you haven't done positive reinforcement, we do ask that you do that with fosters, just because we're going to follow through with that with adopters. Okay, here is what we typically give everybody when they first come in. There are times where we're not able to get flea preventatives or vaccines done in time. That might happen in like a direct intake to foster. If it does, we'll always schedule you to come back and have those done. But most of the time it's going to be done beforehand. So we give vaccines, we give flea preventatives, we give deworming medication. And if we notice anything out of the ordinary, we will treat it. So ear mites, intestinal worms, you know, all sorts of stuff. So most of that should be done before the animal goes home with you. But the most common things that you're going to see from a foster animal are the things listed here. Upper respiratory infection is a cold like our own. You can't get it. It's species specific. So if you have a cat and the cat has it, it can give it to your cats, but it can't give it to your dog, say. And it's a cold like ours that typically you don't treat because it's a virus. If it starts to get nasty and they're like green boogers and you hear congestion in the chest, that might be moving into bacteria, and then we can treat it with antibiotics. In both cases, these are the things you're going to see, and you'll want to keep an eye on those. And if an animal's ill, I'm going to check in with you more often. So it might be like every other day, or every day, depending on the illness and how they're doing. And then diarrhea is going to happen probably with every foster animal you take home. Sorry. But it's very typical for the first day or two for them to have upset tummy and diarrhea. Now, if it continues and you're getting the 3 and 4 days and it's not getting any better, then I'm probably going to want you to bring in a sample, because we could be dealing with a parasitic infection. So Coccidia, Giardia, or just worms. Fleas and worms really go hand in hand because they get the worms by eating flea eggs. So hopefully if we've treated them for both fleas and worms, they're not going to have a recurrence. But there are times where the flea medicine that we try first doesn't work. So if you get an animal home and you're still seeing an excessive amount of fleas, please let us know and we might be able to try something different. And yeah, just if you notice any of this stuff, please let us know. These are the more warning issues that come up, and the ones with the red veterinary emergency next to them, those are going to be like the things that I would expect you to go directly to the veterinarian for. And during the day, we typically work with 2 veterinarians, Chanticleer Vet Hospital, which is like 2 doors down from us, and Animal Hospital of Soquel on Soquel Avenue. After hours, the only emergency hospital in our neck of the woods is Santa Cruz Pacific Vet. So if it's after hours, that's where you're going to have to go. In all, most of these cases, I'm going to want you to check in with me and we'll talk about what the plan is. But for the red veterinary emergency, you may not have time, right? You just got to get this animal to a vet. if that happens, once you're there, just let them know that you have a foster animal for the SPCA. They have our contacts. They will get in touch with us, and then we will determine whatever the treatment's going to be and cover the cost. And you'll just need to wait and see if that animal can go back home with you. But any of these other things, yes, let me know. This is especially important with animals that are really young. So any puppies or kittens, things like lethargy or bloody diarrhea and dehydration can kill a kitten or a puppy. So those kinds of things in a really young animal or an animal who's really old, any animal who's immunocompromised, it becomes more of an emergency situation. So when I send you the foster manual, it'll have our contact numbers right in the front. I'm the #1 contact, and then our shelter manager is my second. So, there's always at least 2 people that you can reach out to in case one of us is unavailable. All right, shifting gears away from the scary medical stuff, unless anybody had any questions about that. Okay, so marketing, I mentioned, I really want you guys to help with that if you can. The more hands we have doing it, the easier it is. So if you are willing to take photos and videos and share them on your own channels, great. I am going to ask you to at least share some of your photos and videos with us. We have to continue marketing them, and it really is dependent upon getting more content. So what I usually look for are, and I'll show you in just a minute, are photos that really zero in on the animal, that don't have a lot of background in them. And for videos, we're talking like even just 10-second snippets, because we can put those together and put something on social media. If you can do a biography for the animal, that's really helpful. Our staff are often writing bios for the animals, but they will use what a foster tells them to add to that, to adjust, to change. So, send it in if you've got tidbits on who the animal is. And then for adoption meet and greets, we're going to go at your pace for that. So you tell us what you're comfortable with. Some of my fosters don't mind talking on the phone or having the person come to their home to meet the animal, but it's really personal preference. So don't feel pressured like you have to do that. You tell us what you're most comfortable with. If you want to just bring them in and then we handle all the meet and greet, that's totally fine too. Just keep us posted on what your comfort level is. And then remember that you got to be a little flexible, because you may have to bring your foster multiple times to the shelter if there's multiple potential adopters, because it's not always a #1 fit on the first go. So here's a look at some photos. And the photo that I want to see most often is going to be like the one at the top, right? Focused in on the animal, animal's looking right at the camera, animal does not look angry or sad or scared, and the background is white, right? Just one color. That really makes the animal pop. So, potentially we could work with any of these 3 photos, but that #1 is what I'm looking for most often. And I know how hard it can be to take good photos of animals. We do it here every day, and it's very challenging. So make sure before you start to do a photo session, you get something that can get the animal's attention. We use a squeaky toy. You get something to reinforce, right? Some good treats. And then make sure you've got a span of time to work with it. It's always easier with a couple of people doing it. So make sure your photos are bright and in focus, that the backdrop is, really free of distraction. Crop out any useless space and really get as close to the animal as you can, not right up on them, right? Sometimes it's too close. So you want to have, a good viewpoint. Show the personality if you can, like if they're playing with their favorite toy or they're in their favorite lounge spot. And make sure, again, that they look happy and friendly and not like they're completely terrified. Social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram. I don't really use Twitter anymore. We do use YouTube and we do use TikTok. So if you're using any of those too, and you want to share content, you can always go ahead and tag us. And then again, you're welcome to do your own posts. We had a foster person who had a dog named Apple. And so she did Apple a day posts on Facebook. And that was finally what got him snatched up by a potential adopter. So try and use humor as much as possible. That really grabs people's attention. If you can also get them doing something unique to them or super cute, that's also a huge draw. And then use hashtags to try and get it to everybody, as many people as possible. All right, returning your foster animal. This is the hard part, right? Anything you're going to do with me, whether that be returning an animal, picking up an animal, picking up supplies, doing adoption meet and greets, they all have to be scheduled, because if I'm not the person helping you, the rest of the staff needs to know it's happening. So if you're trying to coordinate something with me, I'm going to always ask you for a date and time. Just know that ahead of time. So for bringing the animal back, we are going to have it either scheduled or, you know, if it's a longer term foster, we may just keep in contact until you feel like, okay, I need to bring this animal back. We want you to bring back anything you haven't used, because we're going to use that with other fosters. You are absolutely okay to send write-ups and photos after the fact. That helps. And you can check in as often as you like. I do often tell you anyways that your foster got adopted, but if you want to check in and see how they're doing, that's totally fine. You can do that as much as needed. If you are interested, or you know someone who is, friend, family member, you need to let me know as soon as possible. I am not the person who does adoptions. So if you are aware of someone who's interested, tell me, and then the adoptions team gives them 48 hours to get in an adopter's profile, get in their interest. And then from there, the adoption team takes over. So do make me aware if you know somebody like that. Okay, foster frequently asked questions. I'm going to go over these, and then if you guys have lingering questions, you can let me know. How long do you need to care for them? Again, every situation is different. They're all variable. We're going to try and give you a specific time on your foster agreement, but we may talk halfway through and that gets extended, or something comes up and they have to come back. So it's always a bit variable. Can you take them outside or away from your home? Of course you can. We would ask that you wait until their confidence level is up if they're more on the shy, fearful side. And we do want you to try and stay kind of close to home, and again, avoid places where there's going to be a ton of people. Unless they're super outgoing and you've seen that they're fine with that, then fine. We do ask that you don't take them out of the county though, because if they did get away from you, that's really challenging for us to try and get them back. Okay, help, I've lost my foster animal. What do I do? This has come up, and like I said, we've gotten everybody but thus far. But we need to know if that happens, because we have a whole protocol we do here once we're aware that an animal's missing. So let us know. We are going to start messaging our channels. We'll probably come out to your home and help you look. And one thing to remember is if you see the animal, but they're you know, somewhat far from you, don't run after them. The further you push them out of that home range, the less likely we're going to be able to get them back easily. So if you want to get down low and turn and offer treats and call them gently, that will work a lot better than you trying to run after them, because they're going to outrun you probably every time. Okay. What do I do if my foster animal bites me or someone else? This has also occurred at times. And if it does, we actually have to report any bite that breaks the skin. So please let us know. And we'll do all the contact with the person who's been bitten, if it's somebody you know, or even if it's a stranger. If we can just get a name and a phone number, we'll handle it from there. But it doesn't necessarily mean anything for the foster animal. The foster animal might stay in foster, it might come back. It just depends on the situation. But you know, we're going to look at each situation individually and try and decide what the best behavior plan is, given the circumstances. What if I find myself unable to complete my foster care commitment? This is also okay. Like I said, stuff happens. If you do know of things coming up, let me know. Otherwise, if you have to bring one in last minute, that's okay too. And then, can you adopt one of your foster animals at the end of the foster period? Yes, you can. And I know people often call this a foster fail. I don't think of it that way. I think of it as a foster success. I would say, if you come onto foster, if you can wait a little bit, so at least I have you on my foster roster for a while, that would be much appreciated. But, you know, you fall in love, things happen, and we want you to get that animal if that's who you're interested in. But just remember, if it's you, you got to let us know ASAP, and you have like 48 hours to get in your interest and start that process with our customer care team. So after today, I'm going to send you guys the SPCA foster manual, again, that has all those contacts right in the front. I'm going to send you some short little behavior videos, super short flash videos that go over things that tend to happen in foster, and like some further tips on marketing. And I'm going to move you from applicant to active in our volunteer database. So you're going to start getting my foster emails, and you're also going to start getting I do weekly updates for all of our volunteers. So you'll start seeing those come through too. So foster emails are going to be a listing of who's looking for foster and kind of what the matchmaking pieces of that are. So you just respond to me directly and let me know if you're interested. There may be a gap before you get a foster animal, just based on our population. So if you wanted to try a slumber party or do something in the meantime, you're certainly welcome to reach out and we can make that happen. Remember that I'm going to make appointments for everything we do together. So time and date is necessary. That way I can put it on our staff calendar and people know it's coming. And then there's my email in case you guys think of other questions that you're not thinking of now. So what are your questions if you have any?
I was wondering, like, obviously I don't need it right now, but when I have a foster animal, just as like a precautionary, do I get someone's phone number, like your phone number, or someone at the, okay.
Yes.
So it's like easier.
Yeah,
email.
so I have my regular work number, but the number that you get in the foster manual for emergencies is actually my cell phone number.
Okay.
I would ask that you only use that in emergencies, but yeah, you'll have
Okay.
both.
Awesome.
I have a question too.
Yeah.
Sorry. So what is the policy if, say, I need to travel?
So there are occasionally I've done fosters where the foster has got someone that, whether it be friend or family, who can take care of the foster animal while they're gone. But otherwise, what we'd usually have you do, because I do have a lot of fosters who travel, we'll have you bring them back. And then oftentimes, depending on the travel time, they'll stay here until you're back in town and then they go back with you.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. So what did you say? I have to travel for a week for whatever work?
Yeah, so
Okay.
unless you want me to, they'll just come back here and stay here for the week. And then if you can take them back when you get back, great.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Any other questions I can answer for you guys? Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming and being here and sticking with me through it, listening to me talk your ears off. And I look forward to meeting you all face to face at some point.
Awesome. Thanks, Brenna.
Thank you. Have
Thank
a
you.
good
Have a nice
night.
day.
Yeah, have a good
so
night,
much.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.